What's up, design family, and welcome back to another episode of Fittdesign TV. So glad to have you back on the channel. On today's episode, we'll be looking at how yarn fineness is actually calculated. There are honestly two key systems of measurements that we use when it comes to calculating yarn fineness. So in this episode, we'll explore both of the systems and we'll outline how each system will have its own specific use case scenario. By the end of this episode, you should be a lot more confident being able to actually calculate yarn fineness using these two systems and being able to determine which system to use for your specific use case scenario. What's up, design family, and welcome to Fittdesign TV. So glad to have you here. On this channel, we discuss all things sports fashion, graphic design, manufacturing, and technology. We'll discuss key topics, answer pressing questions, and provide actionable steps on starting your own product line. If you're interested in any of the above topics, stick around. You're in for a good one. Getting right into it, what do we actually want to consider when it comes to a single yarn? Well, it's actually quite easy, and this episode will cover the fineness of the yarn. Ultimately, the finer the count, the smoother the hand feel, and the higher the price. When it comes to calculating the fineness of the yarn, there are two key systems of measurement that we use. The first one is going to be the direct system. This one, we're actually taking the mass of the yarn and dividing it by the length. And then there's the indirect system, which is sort of a flip, where we're taking the length of the yarn and dividing it by the mass. We'll start off with the direct systems of measurement. In this case, the higher the count, the coarser the yarn, so the more rough the yarn. The yarn count here actually measures the number of weight units in one length unit. And some specific or these types of systems are generally used on synthetic fibers, jutes, and silks. And some units of measurement, because obviously even within this system, there are different standards and different units of measurements. We have the common systems that are used like the denier, which is extremely common, tex, decitex, and the pounds per spindle. So let's actually look at the common systems of measurement here. When it comes to the direct system, denier is definitely going to be one of the most common. The number or the count in the denier system is calculated with the weight in grams of 9,000 meters. So I'll give you an example. Let's just say that we have a yarn that's a polyester yarn, and we take 9,000 linear meters of this yarn, and it measures 30 grams. The denier weight is 30D in this case. D is the unit of measurement of denier. Next up, we have tex, which is essentially the same exact concept, but instead of per 9,000 meters, we have per 1,000 meters. Moving on, we have the indirect system. This is inverse to the direct system, obviously, as the name suggests, and in this case, the higher the count, the finer the yarn, so it's the opposite. The measure or the yarn count is actually measures the number of length units in a single weight unit. Some of the fibers that are generally used in this case are going to be things like cotton, worsted fibers or worsted yarns, woolen yarns, and flax or wet spun yarns. Some of the common systems of measurement or units of measurement in the indirect system are the English cotton count, the metric count, the worsted count, and lastly, the woolen count. Now, let's actually take a deeper look at how to calculate using the three most common units of measurements in the indirect system. The first one is going to be the English count. This one is simple. It's defined as the number of hanks, where a hank is actually calculated at 840 yards per pound. So when it comes to calculating the yarn here, we'll take the length of yarn in yards divided by 840, since that's a hank, and multiply that by a single pound. Secondly, we have the metric system. This one is defined as the number of meters per kilogram. So again, we'll take the number of meters or the linear meter of our yarn divided by 1,000 and multiply it by 1 kilo to get our metric system units. And lastly here, we have the worsted system. This is defined as the number of hanks, where a hank is actually calculated at 560 yards per pound. So the calculation works as such. We'll take the linear yards, divide them by 560 yards, since that's what's considered a hank in this case, and multiply it by a single pound. That's what gives us the unit. Well guys, that's it. That is a wrap on this episode when it comes to how to calculate yarn fineness To recap quickly, we have both our direct and indirect systems, and we looked at the specific units of measurement in each system. As we mentioned, each of them is going to have its own specific use case scenario and the specific yarns and fibers can be used for. So by now you should have a much better understanding of where those specific use case scenarios are and the actual calculations you have to perform to calculate each unit of measurement. Guys, if you enjoyed this episode, I know it was more of a mathematical and technical one. Let us know in the comments below what other episodes you want to see next. We love putting out content on all things to do with textile production and textile science, and we have a ton of episodes in our backlog that I highly recommend you check out. Also, if you're not subscribed, please consider doing so. We put out great content on a week-to-week basis and haven't skipped a beat in over 2 years, so we'd love to have you along for the ride. Guys, thank you again so much for tuning in to this episode of Fittdesign TV. Until next one, stay awesome.